Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in. As we conclude our second workshop, which was Unit 8, so lots of really interesting work being submitted and some really good feedback, so starting to get the hang of things, working nicely. I think what I'll do for our final workshop, which isn't for a few units yet, is we'll just have one larger group based on the numbers of people we have participating in the course right now. So hopefully the opportunity to get maybe even more feedback just because of the number of people involved. Okay, so we look at Unit 9, which is our midterm unit, and it's a relatively short, kind of straightforward essay, so a slightly different assignment than what we've been doing as far as either submitting your own creative work or doing sort of discussion board kinds of responses. So this is a little more formal as far as an essay, but still hopefully relatively straightforward. And it gives us an opportunity to, again, sort of refine our, or focus on our abilities as a reader, as that can influence our abilities as a writer. Although we're not exactly reading a poem for this assignment, we're watching one or listening to one that's being performed. So as you can read in the unit here, what you're doing is finding a poem either in audio or video format that's being performed by either the poet who actually wrote it, or in some cases maybe a professional performer might be doing it. It's not one of your own poems, so you're finding sort of like an established or a published, or it doesn't have to be famous necessarily, but you know, an actual poem. The easiest thing to do is probably try maybe YouTube, and if there's a poem that you already know that you like, or a poet that you already know that you like, you may just want to start by typing that into the YouTube search engine and seeing what you get. And remember that oftentimes in YouTube you'll find these sort of collages or multimedia things that people put together that are based on a text like a poem, but are again sort of these like video versions that include sort of slideshows or other video components and that kind of thing. Obviously that's not the kind of performance we're looking for. We're looking for literally somebody reading the poem, probably to an actual physical audience, and that's being recorded, but they might just be performing for the camera, and that works as well. But of course what we're interested in is a little bit like with the previous units where we did some close reading or attentive reading for tone and style. We're trying to think about the ways in which the performance of a poem can bring out aspects of that work that maybe we hadn't noticed before or weren't as prominent before. And then of course to think about how that might influence us as writers in terms of thinking of our own work as, you know, how would it work if it were performed for somebody, or if we ourselves were to perform it, even as something as simple as you know, a poetry reading. It doesn't need to be a big public lecture kind of a thing. It can be a fairly informal sort of gathering. So anyway, a slightly different type of assignment as far as the essay format goes, but again, really still in line with the kinds of things we've been concerned about in terms of thinking of, you know, the craft of poetry and how we can become better poets, not just by writing all the time, but by doing other things, whether it's you know, more attentive reading, certain poetic exercises that aren't really designed to produce a finished poem, but are ways of practicing certain skills, and then this kind of exercise where we're thinking about how, pardon me, attending to the performance of a poem can maybe draw our attention to certain, you know, aspects of that work that we hadn't noticed or weren't quite as prominent before, and then how that might influence us as writers of poetry. Okay, so as always, if you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll see everybody soon.